Hello everyone, Professor Thompson here. Um, I am going to be delivering a short video here on oral source citations. And so as you can see here, I have the tips for oral source citation handout. This is the same handout that I gave all of you in class on Thursday. So I just want to say a few things about this handout and clarify a few items. But I do want to emphasize that if you have questions or concerns, please either email me or bring your questions to class on Tuesday. You know, I always give that little time period before class starts to answer questions. All right, so this is the handout again that you have that I gave you from Thursday. I want to point out, if I come back to the our course Blackboard shell, you can find this handout in a lot of locations. For instance, you can go to the Handouts tab, and in the Handouts tab, it's going to be the second handout that's listed here. But I also have loaded it within every single one of your presentation folders. So for instance, when you click into the IAI1 presentation for the requirements for the first speech, you can see that it's the third document right here. And so I have this handout multiple places, and it not only communicates the importance of the document, but it also lets you know that I want to make sure that it's easily accessible to all of you as you might need it. So the first thing I think you need to know about this handout and about oral citations is that we have a speech department objective, we have a speech department minimum, we have a speech department expectation of what we minimally require when it comes to you including source citations in your speech. So oral source citations are when we acknowledge that we've done research outside of just our own opinion, and we're choosing to bring outside material into our speech to support what we have to say. Oral citations are different than written citations. Written citations are those formal APA and MLA citations that occur at the end of a paper or the end of an outline. So oral citations are how we acknowledge and say the information into our presentations, okay? And so let's get right to the handout. So again, tips for oral source citations. What are the two basic elements that the speech department at COD is looking for? So you can see that it says two basic elements right here. The two basic elements are the what, which is right here, and the when, which is noted right here at the top. Now, sometimes the word what can be a little confusing. So I think the best way to look at this is, where did the information come from? Okay, what is the source? What's the title? What's the source? What kind of publication? And so you see, what publication is it? Is it Sports Illustrated? Is it US Lacrosse Magazine? Is it denverbroncos.com? Where did you get the information? For some of you, for this presentation, you might be using a website, and that's fine as well. So feel free to really access almost any source that you want for this speech. Secondly, the next requirement is we want to know when the information was published. When did it get out there? Is it recent? Is it from 2018? Or is it a little bit older, so maybe it's from 2005? I think one of the most important qualities to remember is the more recent your information, when we're talking about statistics or things like that, typically the more believable and they have higher strength and impact in your presentation. So please, if you're using some sort of statistic, make sure it's as recent as possible. Sometimes when you're using some sort of information, of course, it might not have been published recently. So I've been listening to this podcast, and I've been doing some readings on World War I. And so if I'm going to use some sort of quotation from Winston Churchill or some sort of quotation that came from a soldier who fought at the Battle of Verdun, that might have been published in a book from 1921. And so I might be accessing that information. But when was that published is the second core piece of information that we're looking for. The beautiful thing about this handout that I gave you is that it gives you examples of pretty much every kind of source that you might use in your speech. So you can see that it has, if you access some sort of articles, if you access some sort of book, if you want to use personal interviews, if you're using web pages, and then it gives you these examples of what those might sound like as you incorporate them orally into your presentation. Okay? So there's a couple things that are not mentioned on this handout that I want to kind of make clear at this point. And so I'm going to type them in fairly large print as we go along here, as if I'm writing on the whiteboard up front in our classroom. So the first thing that I would emphasize that's not in this handout is that you can say your what and your when in any order, okay? So it doesn't really matter whether you identify where it came from, like Sports Illustrated, or whether it was from the June 4th, 2015 edition, right? So I could say, according to a June 14th Sports Illustrated article, or I could say, in a Sports Illustrated article published on June 14th, 2015. You see, I can flip those in any way. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of practice as you're orally going through your message to figure out how you feel most comfortable saying it. But again, we're looking for where did it come from and the date. The next kind of issue or thing that's not mentioned on this handout is when I use a website, okay, what do I say? And I'm going to emphasize this. Do not say www dot whatever your website is. Okay? So that becomes too repetitive. I don't want you to say, according to www.denverbroncos.com, last accessed June 4th, 2000, whatever, right? I want you just to say the name of the website. So according to denverbroncos.com. So what happens here is I know by hearing the .com or the .org or the .gov or the .edu or the .net, right, or the .xxx or the .uk, right? I just the simple pieces give me some sort of indication that it's a website. So avoid the www. Okay. The next piece of information that's not on this handout that I think would be important to mention is to identify, let's erase some of this, would be to, you've heard me say this a couple times, last accessed. Okay. I would prefer to have a publication date. That's number one. If you can find when something was actually published, so Chicago Tribune, the Sports Illustrated article, those have very, very firm publication dates. But not everything that you find in your research will have that kind of strict publication date. So then what I'm looking for then is, when did you, as the researcher, access the information? And that's what you're going to tell the audience as part of your speech. So in a denverbroncos.com article, last accessed June 4th, 2018, Okay, so it's very clear when you were there. When we hear last access, typically those last access dates are going to be within 1 to 2 weeks of your presentation, because it shows the recency of you doing your research, and it shows the most current information that's on that web page or that publication site. Okay, so please note that this is kind of a piece of information that's important when you're illustrating this when aspect of our department standard. So if I come back to the example outline I showed you in a previous video, you can see that I have the oral source citation written out in the outline as you would say it. And this is an expectation that I have in my class because I want to see that you're constructing it correctly and you're following our departmental standard. The other thing is that I want to make sure that you are not only constructing it correctly, but that you have a plan for it. And if you need to go to your outline in your message, you're not screwing up those citations because this is information that's not your own. It's not something that you wrote. It's something that you obtained and you're using to make your speech stronger, right? I'll also note while we're here that you can see that there's a difference between this oral source citation and then the written citation here, which is the APA or MLA formatting, which is the official kind of written citation that we use at the end of a paper or the end of a book or the end of an outline. If you need help with source citations, there's a great resource page at the COD webpage, COD library webpage. So I'm going to show you how to access that now. If you go into our Blackboard shell, over on the left side, there's a tab that says Library Resources. So you'll click that, and it takes us to the COD library. From there, you can see in the upper part of the page, it says Research. So you'll click on Research, and then you're going to scroll down. We're not in business and tech, and we're not in sciences. We're down here in the liberal arts. You're going to see over here speech communication. You'll click on that, and then when you get to speech communication, it talks about speech research. You can see our speech librarian right here, Jennifer Kelly. She's available if you would like her help. I also have a link to Jen on our Blackboard shell. There's a tab on the left side for her. But there's a tab in here that says Research Fundamentals, and you can click on that. And you're going to notice that we have a link here that says Citations. And it not only gives you information on what citing sources means, it gives you bibliography managers down here like Zotero and BibMe and Noodles, NoodleBib, sorry, that you can use for your written citation. Now that would be down here at the bottom that you would use that for. But then on the web page, it also has this link up here for oral citations. And it provides you the same information here that I was just talking about on your handout here. So we have some aligning of material. We're talking about it not only when we do research in the library, but then how we orally cite it in class and in our speeches as well. So again, that's at the library website that you can find this information, and it all starts with this research tab right up at the top. Okay, so I think that that's probably about a 5 to 10 minute video on some oral citation information. I gave you, as part of that handout, a second page, and normally we would do an in-class activity where you get in groups and you write out an oral citation as you would say it based on the information that I provided for you. So if you have that handout, just look at that second page and ask yourself, can I take the information that's right there and then produce some sort of oral citation? Can I identify when I'm last accessing it or when it was published? How would I say that orally in a speech? The other thing I forgot to mention here is in our department, we're also looking for citation information first. Okay, so please include that, where you got it from and the date before the information. It's also going to be in one sentence. Okay, we're trying to avoid you saying a quotation by somebody or a statistic, and then after you identify it, go, I got that information from. Okay, we want the source and the date prior to you sharing the information. It's the most smooth and it makes the most sense. Okay, all right, I'm out of time. I hope that makes sense. Again, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Looking forward to seeing you all again on Tuesday.